Welcome back. You know Mick Foley as a legendary Hall of Fame wrestler, but did you know about his legendary love for Christmas? I'm not even lying about that. After a life of putting his body on the line to entertain you, Mick has decided to fill his time full-time away from the ring by immersing himself in the challenge of portraying Santa Claus. All of his time portraying different characters as a wrestler led him to find the character of his dreams, Santa. Here to discuss both those roles and so much more, former WWE superstar Mick Foley, author of the new book, Saint Mick, My Journey from Hardcore Legend to Santa's Jolly Elf. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I've just made a quick judgment call over the last 2 minutes. I like you.
I like you too, Mick Foley. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because you're a man who's committed to the beard. And I have a feeling if the whim struck you, you would dye that thing white and really...
Well, I do it white. Yeah, I'm about 3 weeks... No, I mean, Thanksgiving. Day after Thanksgiving.
Let the turkey cool. That's
white,
the same
and
here.
if anyone out there knows about their grooming knows, it's painful.
Ooh.
So people sense...
Dye a facial beard white.
Yeah, to dye it white, to dye a dark beard white. So even the WWE fans who aren't really on board, like they understand at a certain level it's important to me. They're not necessarily enthusiastic about it, which is why I'm essentially writing a book that has no audience. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not predicting big things. I'm just happy I wrote it. I mean, I'm very proud of it. I love
Well, you say in the book you've had several New York Times #1 bestsellers.
I've had 2 number one bestsellers.
Well, that's several in my book.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
More than one.
Yeah, and this one, it's like, you know, you tend to look for what people want. And it's like, nobody, I don't think this is the book people have been wanting, but it's a book that I felt like writing.
Now, I know your WWE journey was very emotional.
It was.
And it was draining. Weeks away from your family at a time, 300 days plus a year on the road. Was it that emotional darkness that led you to the ultimate light, which is celebrating Christmas year-round?
Well, partially.
Yeah.
I think that portraying kind of wild characters allowed me to more easily accept like a gentler version. And I think to make a character really work in WWE, it has to be an extension of yourself. But the characters of especially Mankind and Cactus Jack, not so much Dude Love, but they required me to be tougher and stronger and much more aggressive than I am naturally as a person. Whereas portraying Santa Claus effectively, like, you have to dig deep, but you dig deep to become kinder and gentler and wiser.
Do you feel there's a side of you that truly is Santa Claus?
I'd like to think, yeah, I'd like to think.
Yeah.
You know what, when you do it,
yes,
and it goes well, it sounds crazy, but there's a moment, you know, we call it in wrestling living the gimmick. But when you get in there, and there's a chapter about a visit I made on Christmas night to a boy who'd been, you know, so ill that I didn't think he'd recall the hospital visit, and I made a visit to his house, and I think it was one of the best things I've ever done. Because when I was in that house and I was in that role, like, I believed I was the guy, you know. And I don't mean that in a crazy way. I mean that in a way where you're telling stories that feel real. They're things you've thought of, you know, creatively. You've created a North Pole that feels real to you. So
yeah, and you do that at your house 2/3 of the year. You're basically living in the North Pole.
I take the month of December off from work, and I do all my Santa stuff is volunteer work. I do grow the beard out all year, so in a sense, and I look back at when I was WWE commissioner last year, and I had the real long hair and the long beard, and I'm like, at any given time, if Mr. McMahon had pulled me aside and said, yeah, like, oh, I understand it's important, but you look awful. Like, it would have been hard for me to disagree, but as long as I'm 52 and I'm wearing sweatpants and I can grow a beard out for an entire year, and the only reason I'm wearing socks is for you, Kennedy.
I take that as the highest compliment. I really do. Is there a worry about CTE in wrestling?
Yeah, oh sure, yeah. And I touch on that in my book, is that I'd retired from full-time wrestling in 2000, but I made sporadic comebacks, and when I returned to WWE in 2011, they had me take their impact test, and I realized as it was happening that it wasn't going particularly well. So independent of WWE, I scheduled an appointment with a top neurologist, and the very next day, WWE called me and said, there's been an issue with your impact test. So I had 2 top neurologists basically take the bat out of my hand and say, you're done.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, how do you find something that makes you feel as alive as you felt when you were in that ring?
Is this something, the celebrating Christmas,
Yeah.
Saint Mick, is that thing?
Yeah.
Very good.
So I feel like, yeah, it's exactly like when I'm connecting and you get the sense, like you look in this sense, you know, this is a little boy on Christmas night, and I'm looking at his mother and his aunt, and I'm wondering, like, over the course of an hour, if they're ever going to run out of tears because they're so happy. And that type of feeling, like, you know, it's almost exactly the same type of feeling I would get. I said to my son, who was my elf on Christmas Eve, after a visit we did, I said, I feel like I just had a big pay-per-view match. And he goes, but Dad, there were only 3 people there. And I said, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's all about creating something. And
that story is documented in your new book, Saint
Indeed.
Mick. Thank you so much. Mick Foley, great to see you and talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Now I'm excited for the holidays. I'm going to let the turkey cool, but I will celebrate you year-round.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.